Hello and welcome back to the Tata Steel Chess Tournament round 11, and this time with the other very exciting game of the round, Alireza Firouzja against Fabiano Caruana. And well, this game was indeed just fascinating with a lot of twists and turns, incredibly complicated in the style of these players, actually time trouble and everything you can actually imagine. Yeah, so let's get started with the game. So Alireza is with the white pieces against Fabiano Caruana, word number 2, and they are actually chasing Anish Giri, who is the leader of the tournament. And actually Anish played a quicker game. I have already shown that on my channel, so you can check that one out as well, what Anish did against Magnus Carlsen, the world champion. So let's get started with the game. So Alireza opened with e4, so no this London system this time. Let's go directly to some mainline. e4 and well, Fabi plays the move e5. He most often plays e5 than other stuff, but he has already tried c5 in this tournament, especially when he wants to win. So maybe this e4 e5 that he goes for the main repertoire is also showing some respects towards Alireza. So now comes knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4, as we see basically all the time these days. Now comes bishop c5, c3, knight f6, d3, and well, Anish played the castle in this tournament. I'm sorry, in this round. However, Fabi played the move d6. Now white castles. Black plays the move h6, and here comes rook e1. So h6 is a bit less of the less popular move. One of the tricks is if you happen to start with h3, it would be a huge mistake for white now, because then black plays move g5, and these things are known to be quite bad for white. But Alireza starts with rook e1, and here comes black castles, knight d2, bishop b6, and here Firouzja plays a move that is a lot more rare, plays the move a4. And he actually does this after thinking for quite a while. So in this tournament, Firouzja is actually playing all sort of openings and all sort of systems, but he actually does it quite slowly, and he ends up in time trouble very often. And after a4, a5, he again spends maybe even 20 minutes on his next move, which is bishop b5. So the point is, I suppose, is to put the knight on c4, but this is actually very slow. And Caruana reacts very quickly, plays the move knight g4, immediately attacking this pawn, and after rook e2, actually he has quite a good option here. So if you really want to go for the win with black, here you can play the move f5. And this actually is a good move according to the computers. And of course you take some risk because you're opening your rook king as well. So there comes some h3, knight f6, and yeah, this rook looks a bit silly at the time being. So this would have been a very sharp option, but for the time being, Fabi chooses a more well, a more normal and more solid option with knight e7. The point is, of course, to try to play c6 and maybe even d5 if the white knight with the white bishop disappears. So, however, now comes d4, which is a good move from Alireza. Once this knight went back, you have the chance to advance in the center. This also shuts up this bishop for the time being, so that's a good move. Now comes knight g6. The knight would like to jump to f4. White plays knight f1, and here comes a good move from Caruana. And actually, I invite you to stop the video and try to find this good move. So white was quite a bit slow with developing, put the bishop to c4 and then b5, moving this rook up and going all the way with this knight. And now black, so white has quite lost some control over the center, and black has the chance to strike immediately with d5. It's a very good move from Fabi. And yeah, so it's the position is opening up, and black is clearly ahead of development. These pieces are nowhere. This rook is very ugly, and even the white king can get into some trouble, as we will see. So now white takes on d5, and the idea is, of course, that black takes on d4 first. Now white has a good intermediate move played by Firouzja with h3, attacking this knight, so the knight has to go back, and now the white knights take back on d4. But now the black knight comes in. And here if we, well, let's play rook e1, which is a very logical move. Black is threatening to jump in, so white sidesteps. So if we stop for a second, It's very obvious that black is doing very well here. He actually, in my opinion, has the advantage already. This bishop is very strong, looking very strong here. His colleague on b5 is not particularly good, can be actually chased away, and then it's not very clear where your light square bishop belongs. This black bishop is already pretty much looking at its target. The black queen can also come, and the main difference why white is doing worse, so black is doing better, is that these two knights, especially the opportunity to jump into f4, are just dominating the colleagues. So now comes the black with knight f4, and here comes bishop e3, some developing move. And now comes a good move from Fabi, just asking the question, where do you want to put your bishop? And actually here, Alireza is sort of in trouble already. Here he should have played the move bishop e2, but that's obviously a very ugly move because you're just giving up your bishop freely, and then, well, it's a very open position, so the two bishop is definitely huge advantage for black. So the only way to actually preserve your bishop is to play bishop c4. However, this allows a very nice tactical motif for Caruana. So I invite you to stop the video and try to find this, even though it's actually very, very complicated. So don't be very discouraged if you can't do that. So the thing is that if you put your bishop on c4, then it actually becomes unprotected. And there is going to be this fourth rank that's gonna be emptied very fast, and black is gonna have some attack there. So here comes the move knight takes g2. Beautiful sacrifice. Actually, Caruana was thinking for a very long time, and then he did not opt for this option. So the point is, white now obviously has to take, and now comes queen h4. And the thing is that this h3 pawn actually cannot be protected. So there is this bishop eyeballing the pawn and also the queen, and there is nothing white can do here. You played the move queen f3, which is seemingly the only move that protects. Then now comes knight e5, double attack, and the bishop, as I mentioned, the c4 bishop is hanging, and you have to actually remove your queen, and then the pawn is hanging. So this is horrible because you just gave a whole tempi for white, sorry, for black. So knight c4, and then on the light squares, if you remove your queen, the light squares are gonna come in, queen e4 or queen g4, and yeah, this is just over. So, and if you do not protect this pawn, you can just play a move like knight g3, and now comes the point that after c5, this bishop is gonna hang behind, so you can't move your rook. Sorry, you can't move your knight, and maybe it's even better if you take first with a check and then just move. And now c5, and the point is that you're gonna get the piece back as black, and then there's this huge attack going on, so black is just winning. However, this option was missed by Fabi, and instead of taking immediately on g2, he played the move bishop c7. So basically, from good diagonal, you put your bishop to another, actually quite good one, on this one, sorry, on this diagonal. So here comes knight g3, and actually the same motif still works. So you can still take on g2, with the same idea that queen h4 is actually a double attack. You're pretending to take, and you're pretending to play c5. And this is still a huge advantage for black. But it's actually for the second time, it's also missed, and it's not surprising. Probably Fabi already rejected this option before. So now comes knight g3. Black goes back, bishop d2, queen d6, so some developing movement. Finally, white is actually consolidating. The position is not so bad anymore. No immediate tactic on the g2 pawn. So white is doing alright. Comes bishop b3, developing moves from both sides. Now this knight jumps back. So this rook goes to e8, queen c2, and now again another knight jumps in. And the position starts to get sharp again. So again, you have to look at all sorts of trickeries from the black side. So yeah, it becomes complicated again. Now comes rook d1. Black takes on e1. Actually, it's a nice little maneuver that you take just at the point when your opponent made a move with the rook. So basically, he loses a tempi. Now comes rook e1, and here comes queen f6. And I haven't mentioned that Firouzja was playing very, very slow. He got into a time trouble very early. So already at this point, he only has like 1 or 2 minutes, so he's using only the 30-second increment. Well, Fabi had initially a huge advantage on the clock, but then he also caught up, and eventually they were both in time trouble, and Fabi lost a lot of time when calculating probably this knight g2 options. So now comes queen f6, again, very huge threat of taking here. Knight e4 comes, and rook d8. And here already Alireza starts to lose sort of the threat of the game again. So here something like bishop e2, putting it here, and then bishop b1, trying to activate along this diagonal, would have been quite a normal plan. However, Alireza plays the move rook e4. So not bishop e2, but rook e4. And he has actually a very concrete idea with this rook e4. So here black has several options, already pushing c5 and trying to clarify the situation in the center with all these pieces. Actually leads to quite some advantage for black, but very logical move comes from Caruana, queen g6, pinning along this diagonal. And so here something like bishop takes f4 and try to liquidate some pieces, say bishop f4, rook e7, exchanging the queens as well. Sorry, not bishop takes back, knight takes back, and then rook e7. Yeah, so this is possible. Black is probably doing better with the two bishops, but it's white is still trying to hold on. However, Alireza goes for a very concrete plan. With bishop takes d5, so takes here, and the whole point is that when knight takes back, he wants to jump into f5. And again, with very little time on the clock, huge complications are arising. So the point of this knight f5 is obviously you cannot take, because if you take here twice, then there is a discovered attack rook e8, takes, and then the queen is come, so you can't do this one. But after knight f5, there's a huge threat of playing rook g4, and then going against the g7 pawn. So black's next move is forced, queen f6. Here comes the move rook g4. And here actually black has a winning move. So I invite you to stop the video and try to evaluate this position correctly and try to way to defend. So it is actually very clear that white went all in. Is a huge pin, the pieces are hanging. So if you don't get material and a lot as white or give checkmate, you're going to have problems. Obviously there is a knight takes h6 and rook g7 as a very huge threat. So here there is a very quiet computer move that wins on the spot, which is just king h8. And actually the white pieces are too much reliant on each other, and there's no way to get out of it. So if you take with the knight, there's obviously this bishop, the rook is hanging behind, so you can't do that. So the only move here is rook takes g7. And for the time being, it seems like that white just won a pawn and everything is well protected if you take on f5, knight takes back, but there are several ways to disbalance these pieces. One is c5, and another one is even more solid with just putting your knight back. And actually both are winning. So c5 is more complicated because white has a chance of bishop takes h6, and after c takes d4, now there is actually some knight jumping going on with a discovered attack here. So actually there is a chance with knight d6. Now the point is there's a checkmate here, so black needs to take. And after knight takes f7, white is winning the queen, but there is a too huge price to pay for it. So black has too many pieces. But this is still not obvious. So this was very complicated, and if Fabi saw only this one, then there was a... so it's actually possible that he rejected this option. However, there was a more clear way, because after rook g7, you can just put your knight on e7, and you're immediately disbalancing white. So if you take with the knight, then white just takes the rook. So black just takes the rook. So to knight e7, rook h7 check is a very tricky move, because you're actually forcing black into this battery. But after king h7, knight e7 check, king just goes back, and there's actually nothing. And actually white is having even more problems, not only in exchange, but to knight f5, the only way to retreat, you can actually take it, and there's gonna be issues that pieces are hanging behind. So to knight f5, black can finish off white with rook takes d2. After queen d2, queen f5, it's a whole piece. There's no coming back from here. So this was the move king h8. If you actually found it, especially considering how much time trouble Fabi was, that's very nice, but that didn't happen. So to rook g4, Fabi played the second best move, which is g6. However, this is already a huge advantage for white, because white just takes a pawn with a check, and when the king goes back, white just starts rerouting. So there is a pawn already in the pocket of white, and now the knight is gonna jump back. And to avoid that the attack actually unfolds even further, black will need to give up his bishops. So now comes knight f4, knight g4, and Fabi just took on g4. Pawn takes back, king g7, and now Alireza goes on in a very professional way. Bishop takes f4, exchanging further the pieces. Bishop takes, And there is even further exchange with knight f5 check. The point is to be able to take here, g takes f5 and rook f4. Now there is a huge pin along here, so you don't want to lose another pawn because that would be the end of the game as black. So black plays the move king g5. And so again, actually, the players have just very little time, but I invite you to stop the video and try the best way. So in my opinion, this is the next move is where Alireza starts to go wrong and his advantage starts slipping away. So here there's a very nice move actually from white. And this move is g3. So just protect your rook, give some place to your king, and if black takes the pawn back, you have a very brutal move with queen e4, centralizing this queen, and there's no way to protect this pawn. There is no back rank issue, just put your king up, and black is in a world of trouble. This is completely losing. But Alireza actually did not see this, played the move rook f5, and after queen g4, rook f3, he made a time control, but already the position is not so clear anymore. White is simply up a pawn. There's a huge threat of rook g3, of course. However, there are only major pieces left, and even either a rook ending or a queen ending, only being up by a pawn, has very good tendencies of ending in a draw. So white needs to try to create something more against the black king. So now black plays the move queen h5. And while here white had some slow options to continue, maybe play b3, maybe just give a check and then try to create some room for your king. But it was move 41, and Alireza actually, in my opinion, made a mistake. So they made a time control. Alireza had a lot of time, like 50 minutes, and then he started to think, and he actually reached the wrong conclusion in terms of what move to play. And this is quite common in chess players, that you made a time control and then you feel like finally I arrived to the time control, I have time, and then their brain just stops working and then they make a mistake on move 41. So he played the move c4, which doesn't show immediately why this is such a bad move, but the reply should actually highlight rook d4. And now all of a sudden the black rook can actually join the party, and even g4 or h4 can put pressure against this guy. And yeah, so this is starting to get looking actually good for the black side in terms of making the draw. So now comes queen c3, queen e5, and well, here white could have just transferred into a rook ending with g3, and then black just plays rook d1, king g2, exchanges the queens. But this rook ending is more drawish than winning, because you only have one pawn up. Actually, it's both on the king side where the kings are, and if black manages to exchange pawns on the other side, either by immediately trying to push some b5 things, rook d2 or rook d4, and try to exchange the pawns, the chances for making a draw is very good. So imagine like a few moves ago, well, black was just completely lost. You played g3, fg, queen e4, and they can shake hands essentially, even though they're not allowed at this tournament, like shaking hands, but black can resign. So c4, rook d4. And so this is where we were, and white played move rook d3, but black can just simply play c5. Very good move, even reinforcing this pawn, the rook with a pawn, seemingly giving up this pawn. So well, basically, well, white could play something slow like king f1 and then see what happens, but then likely they just end up in a rook ending, which is looking pretty drawish, especially now that the pawn structure is going to be like completely fixed. So white's only real chance is giving the check with rook g3. Now black goes to king f8 and take this pawn. However, there is a very nice way to actually draw this, and I invite you to stop the video and try to find out the way to draw with black here. So the move here, which is actually quite straightforward, so you give a check on d1. Now comes king h2, and white has the problem of not really having an option to get out of this perpetual. So you give a check again. Now comes rook h3, you give another check. So, well, if white repeats, then black repeats, and that's it. So you have to play the move g3 to block the check. But now this rook is actually looking very stupid, and black can immediately use this to his advantage. Play the move queen f5, which just attack this pawn, and there is actually no good way to protect things here. So white can even give a check, Now the king has to come into the center. If you go the other way, then all of a sudden white pieces are well placed to checkmate. So queen h8 here, and I think this ends the game. So you have to come into the middle. Here you can play the move queen takes b7 even with a check, but now black goes back and this guy is hanging. And if you play the move king g2, then now comes rook d2. And again, you have to protect this guy. If you go back, then black just goes back. So here actually Alireza decided to play the move queen h1. But here black can just simply take the pawn. There's nobody guarding this guy. And after queen g2, actually there's a little bit of trick here. So if you, yes, black feel like now it's your time to do something and just play queen e3, which seemingly just wins on the spot because you have this rook d2 and winning the queen, and the white pieces are just horrible. White has the chance of playing rook h4, countering, and if you play rook d2, then rook e4 check, and it's actually just hanging. Black can take, but now white can take this rook again, and we can start counting the pawns and playing this endgame onwards. But obviously Fabi did not fall for this trap. He just played the move rook d2, and after taking, the white king has to go back. And now after rook takes b2, white is up a pawn, but there is no real winning chances here. So here Fabi played the move. No, it's white's move. It came rook h5, and now you can just protect this pawn. That's one way to draw, but actually just this move came. Rook takes c5, rook takes, and yeah, there is really not much left to do here. So the move, yeah, so I just played the move king g2, but really there's nothing left here. Comes king d6, rook check, king e6. Basically the only thing you have to pay attention to is that do not give up your f pawn like mindlessly. So imagine, I don't know how to get to that position, so I play rook d4, king e5, rook f4. Actually this is how the game went, but imagine black plays just a move like this, and to hope that if you take, then I just take. But the problem is that now your king is actually cut, so don't go for this, even though it's still a draw, but you have to be quite precise. But of course Fabi was better than this, and after rook f4, just protect your pawn. There's nothing left here. White tried king h3, rook e3 came. Very good move. Keep an eye on this one. Put the rook behind the pawn. It's best place. This king is active. And Firouzja, even though he has the pawn up, he just offered a draw, and they peacefully finished the game. So this was the game, like super interesting, all the twists and turns. So first black was doing very well out of the opening, had great chances of winning it, but then kind of blew it, and then Alireza went for this knight f5 idea. So giving up the bishop and go for knight f5, like somewhere here, which actually was not supposed to work out, but then it did because Fabi did not find this beautiful king h8 move. And then white was up by a lot of stuff, and then at the end it ended up in a draw. So maybe it's a fair draw actually, like the result, but the game was just super interesting. So Anish actually played a draw, and with that he remained the sole leader. But now the chasing pack consists of Firouzja and Caruana, of course, but unfortunately for Yasipenko, he lost, and he's out of the race now. However, the other Dutch guy, Jordan van Forest, managed to win. Actually, he had a very strange game against Hari Krishna. After like 50 moves, Jordan was just up a whole piece for basically nothing. But the game still went on forever. But I assume that at the end he did manage to win. He was completely winning when I last checked. So he also joins the chasing pack. And there is obviously also Karzan there, but he has already, I think, is 1.5 point behind Anish. So and they have two more rounds left, and tomorrow the big game is gonna be Anish Giri against Firouzja. So see you then.